Hi cubies, here's Alexandra, and welcome to another video. Today we don't want to paint, we want to talk about painting. To be specific, about the progression of learning in miniature painting. I want to give you a little bit of an idea about adjacent learning, what that means, and how we develop our painting skills when we paint. Obviously, you develop painting skills while you paint. The more you paint, the more your skills will improve and the better your overall painting results will be. But there's a little bit method to the madness, because if you just paint over and over the same things, your learning will hit a diminishing returns. Means that you cannot learn any more of the same things you're doing. So in order to progress with your overall quality of painting miniatures, you have to make a switch in your head to have a mindset of improving yourself while painting. So if you have the goal to have each miniature that follows the next is a little bit better than the previous one, then you are in a learning process. But if you are just trying to paint your army to a decent standard and that's it, you're not interested in anything more, that's totally fine. We have thousands of people like that in our community who just want to slop on 3 coats of different paints, so okay, and there you go. That's totally okay. So let's start with the first thing. The first thing you learn about miniature painting is the application of colors itself. So, meaning you learn how a pot of paint works, how you shake it, how you open it, use your brush to grab the paint, apply it on your miniature itself so that it has a smooth surface, and so on and so on. So this is a learning process that takes a while. This is maybe the steepest learning curve of all. The application of colors. This one here, this is the most important thing you will learn. And on this, everything else builds up. If you know how to paint with acrylic paints, then you can move on with the second stage. This is the application of washes. Oops, I wanted to underline that. Sorry. The application of washes. That means you know how to use a pot of wash, how to use it to shade a miniature, how to apply certain liquid colors to your miniature in order to create shadows and transitions in your paint works. This also includes the new contrast paints. They are basically washes with a higher pigment count, so they are in this category. So in your first application of colors, you have your miniature just blocked out with standard colors, and now you're applying some washes to give it more highlights, more shadows, and make it overall more appealing to the eye. That is step 2. This step is a very quick learning in regards to application of colors. It goes much more faster to learn how to use a wash. But there are some tricks to using washes, and over time you will learn those. You can talk with other people, you can learn by yourself, you learn how to feather out your washes, like you apply something here and then you dip your brush into water and then you feather out the wash so that the color gradient is created. Those are all techniques that you learn in this step. So after that, normally the progression stops at this point. This is now the dry brushing step. Dry brushing is the last step on the line of, I would say, standard techniques that the normal wargamer would use. So, meaning dry brushing is for creating highlights, very easy. You dip your brush into a pot of paint, you wipe most excess paint off, and then you go over it, and only the highlight areas, the raised areas, will be hit by the dry brush, and some pigments will stick on the miniature, and so you create a highlight. So with these three main pillars, you're basically able to paint any miniature that is out there to a decent tabletop quality. But some painters don't stop there. They want to raise their skill level to a level that is much more appealing to the eye, that is not just a quick application of colors to just play. They want to have a miniature that is really pleasing to the eye, that is not just on a 3-meter distance on the gaming table in the entire army looking good. It is, you pick up the miniature and at arm's length, for example, this miniature looks perfect. If you zoom in on the miniature, then, well, you start to see some errors, but at this stage you're learning two things. First of all, you learn to mix colors. This here is also a very important step in progressing with your learning curve what painting is. I know a lot of you are already using color mixing techniques, all kinds of crazy stuff. Believe me, I know that, but there are some painters out there that have started yesterday and they don't have a clue. They are looking at the paint pots in the range, and they see, okay, Evil Sun Scarlet, and then I follow with Troll Slayer Orange, okay, and then next in line would be maybe a yellow. Yes, I progress in this stage. Okay, but no one told them that you could easily mix those two together to create this one. Well, at this stage you learn that. So, and with mixing paints comes another very important step into, well, the upper classes of painting miniatures. This is applying highlights. Applying highlights is something that is quite important step. It is one step down from dry brushing. This is applying highlights manually without the aid of the dry brush doing it for you. This is, you take your miniature, you watch where are the high spots, and there you apply the highlight directly with a brush. And yeah, this is the stepping stone. Those two here, color mixing and placing highlights, those are the stepping stones to really progressing in your painting career. So, next step in highlights and color mixing is the blending. Blending means that you have a color transition from one color to another. That can be applied in several different ways. For example, in layering, wet blending, or using an airbrush. So, those are the main three versions how you well, apply a blending to your miniature. Probably the first thing you will learn is the layering. So layering means you apply a paint, then you mix a little bit more of the highlight color into it and make another layer. More highlight color, another layer, and another layer, and another layer, so that you overall have a color transition on your miniature. This is absolutely fine, and this step will last, I would say, if you stop here, several years. You can perfectly make really nice miniatures just with layering. This is the step where I am mostly right now. So here, this stage here is right now my level of painting abilities. I dabble a little bit in the other parts, we will see in a moment, but this is, well, the furthest my abilities are right now. Next we have, next to layering, is the wet blending. This is also an adjacent technique, because this combines the color mixing aspect with the layering aspect and highlights. So, meaning wet blending, you're mixing the color directly on the miniature, not on your palette, on the miniature itself, to create a very smooth highlight. So, for example, here on this miniature, here you can see this is wet blending. You don't see any brush strokes, this is just a color transition from one color to another. So, and if you master wet blending, your miniature standard will raise enormously. It is a very delicate point in your painting career to learn this step, because this is also the stepping stone to another layer of progression in your painting career, to make even more awesome miniatures. So, then in the blending department we have totally the airbrush. This is another tool that has come up over the years and is more and more prevalent in the public eye. On YouTube you find tutorials using the airbrush over and over again on everything from simple base coating the miniatures to smooth blendings with an airbrush, color transitions, and so on. The airbrush is a really nice tool, but unfortunately the airbrush is also a stopping point. If you're constantly using the airbrush instead of trying to raise your overall abilities in painting with a brush, the amount that your painting technique can improve is halted by the airbrush. Don't get me wrong, airbrush miniatures look really, really nice, but if I compare those to, well, Slayer Sword winning, Golden Demon winners, or Crystal Brush winners, they don't stand a chance. This is another easy way out to a technique that is otherwise far superior, but it will take much more time if you do it by brush, obviously. But let's get along. So, after you have mastered those techniques, the obvious next step is this here. So, first you have the realistic road. You will start to apply maybe battle damage. This is just a topic here. This means you start to apply realistic stuff to your miniatures, like for example a water base, or you try, like it stands there, battle damage, the armor, rust, scratches on the armor, and all this neat little stuff that scale modelers use since the early beginnings of miniature painting, like oil streaks on tanks and all that neat little stuff, dirt on the tracks of a tank, and so on. This is a stepping stone that can also take several years to master. Some really neat little stuffs with pigment application, with special tools like liquid water and mud texture paints and all that stuff. To master this takes a long time. Another step you can take is obviously make freehands. Freehands is also a nice thing to work on if you are more focused towards large miniatures like tanks, titans and stuff. This is the natural progression if you're using that. This is also a nice combination with airbrush. If you airbrush a miniature previously and then start applying freehands, this is also a really nice way to up the miniature even more than it was just with the airbrush. So, on the other hand, if you are using wet blending, your natural stepping stone to that is the non-metallic metal. There are several ways you can go the non-metallic metal route. First time users just use this for maybe a power weapon with a non-metallic metal in a color like blue or red or orange or purple or something like that to make a nice little glowing power weapon. But from that stepping stone, it's not far to make the entire miniature in non-metallic metal, meaning that all metal parts on the miniature will be painted in, well, like the word implies, with non-metallic metals, meaning metal would be in dark and lighter grays with whites and blacks as extreme highlights and shadows. Then you have obviously your gold, your brass, your bronze, and so on. So non-metallic metal is definitely a stepping stone towards really high profile competition miniature stuff. And with non-metallic metal, you obviously will use wet blending for that. You will even go a step further with glazing and feathering. Those are two techniques that are really the non plus ultra of making a smooth transition of colors just with a brush. So the difference between glazing and feathering is you have a glaze. Those are glaze colors that tint an area with your glaze in a specific color. So the feathering, on the other hand, sorry for hitting the camera, feathering is when you are painting with normal paints. For example, this here. You have a color transition of here electric blue to white on a sword, for example, for non-metallic sky earth non-metallic metal. But you have some brush strokes in there. Feathering is then you water down the color that it is just some cloudy water, so that it is barely paint. So you're basically painting with your water pot that you have washed your brush in. You are applying a very thin coat of just cloudy water over the surface. Let that dry again, let that dry again. Most people have a hairdryer next to them. Apply, hairdryer, apply, hairdryer. And after maybe 200, 300 strokes, this cloudy water has enough pigment in it to make the colors smooth into each other. The technique is super important for really high-end stuff, also with the glazing, but it takes time. It takes immensely amounts of time to make those color transitions so buttery smooth that the human eye can't even tell that there is a transition. So, well, from this point, it is just only perfection. So, at this point, you're just trying to improve your methods of painting and finding your own style, what is best suited for you, and you concentrate on this and, well, tunnel vision, going straight into this painting process. And well, if you have ended this way of progressing through the painting techniques, don't get me wrong, that can take years. So from getting from let's say here to here is a jump of maybe 5 to 10 years, and from here to here is a jump also of 5 to 10 years. Depending obviously on the amount of miniatures you're painting. If you're painting every day, that the time scale might vary a little bit. But we all know the saying, something you learn, you perfect in 10,000 hours of practice. So, perfecting your painting takes some time, and this is the route you are going. This is your roadmap to improving your painting. And well, I hope you have some inspiration on where to take your painting to the next step, to the next level. Maybe you are stuck at one point and you think, okay, let's give wet blending a try. I'm stuck here at my armies. I have 2 1000 point armies and I just want to improve my painting. Then, well, start training. No one is stopping you. So, I hope you liked this video, and we see us in the next one. You, Alexandra.